I have spent all 24 years of my life in the Chicago suburbs next to the beast that is Chicago, Illinois. And as I'm making these videos, I'm trying to think, hey, what do people want to know? What kind of information are people craving? And while of course I'm going to make probably hundreds of videos about the good things that the Chicago suburbs bring, something jumped out at me and said, hey, you know what? Let's kind of turn the tables here and show people some of the negatives to living in the suburbs. Before I start bashing on the suburbs, my name is Jimmy Zitnick. I help young professionals make informed decisions when it comes to buying or selling real estate here in the Chicagoland area. So if that sounds like you're somebody that needs some help or just has some questions that you want answered by a local pro, then I'm gonna throw my contact info up on the screen here. It'll also be in the description, so please feel free to reach out, whatever you need. No question is too big or too small. Now, number one was a no-brainer. The first thing that jumped into my mind was the commute is never what you think it's going to be. Now, if I ever went on vacation or was just talking to somebody casually and they asked, hey, where are you from? Chicago's the easy answer, and I would usually take it a step further and say, well, I'm from the suburbs, 40 miles northwest of the city. Now, to everyday person, you might think, hey, 40 miles, if you're traveling down the expressway, going 70, 80, that doesn't seem too bad. Seems like you might get there in under an hour. However, it never, ever fails. If you leave your home in the suburbs, you will fly, or you think you're flying, to the city. And all of a sudden, you hit the city limits of Chicago, and without fail, you will have probably about an hour, sometimes even worse. You might be sitting in traffic for 2 hours, and it always happens right outside of the city. You might be 6 miles from where you need to be, and your GPS still says 45 minutes. It's easily one of the most frustrating things of all time, and again, was the first thing I thought of when it came to the negatives about living in the suburbs. Now, of course, the alternative, or the primary alternative to driving, would be taking the train. We have what's called the Metro system here in the Chicago suburbs. It's phenomenal. Admittedly, it can get you from the suburbs to the city pretty quickly. It's a very efficient system. It's usually always on time. I have taken it dozens and dozens, if not maybe hundreds of times, and very rarely have any issues. However, in a more practical sense, if let's just say you start work at 9 a.m. and the 8 a.m. Metro doesn't get you there until 9 or 9:15, and now let's remember, when you get off the train, you need to either walk to your office building or you might need to Uber there. That's extra time. You're gonna be late. So now you need to take the 7 a.m. or maybe there's a 7:15, but that's gonna get you into the city far too early. And now you find yourself sitting at a coffee shop every time you need to go into the office for an extra 45 minutes every day. That just isn't necessary. So yes, the Metro can get you there, but unless it perfectly lines up with your schedule and you're a daily user, it can be kind of a pain. And let's factor in the added cost if you are, or the added physicalness of it. If you're getting off the train and you need to Uber to your office building every day, that $10 or $15, $20 Uber will eventually start to add up and eat into the money that you thought you were saving by taking the train. Or you find yourself walking 2 miles to your office every day, and when it's negative 15 degrees here in Chicago, nobody wants to do that. So again, the commute is not always as easy as you think it might be. Now, number two, while we're on the topic of cars and commuting, number two is you absolutely need a car in the suburbs. There are some people that say, oh, well, you can Uber or take public transit. I just don't really see it as feasible in 99% of the suburbs, because you still are probably 5 to 10 miles away from a grocery store. You are probably a few miles away from your kid's school, from your job, from everything. In the suburbs, you are absolutely going to need a car, or you're just not going to enjoy your time here, and you might as well go to Chicago. So if you're somebody that doesn't like driving, or you don't want to have to drive everywhere, then the suburbs just aren't a good fit, because your car almost kind of becomes your second home. It's where you'll listen to podcasts and your entire favorite album because you've got the time to do it, and you will develop a love-hate relationship with the bottle that doesn't fit in your cup holder. Now, number three, and this was funny to me because yes, this was something I'm just entirely numb to living here my entire life. The suburbs are quiet until they're not. Yes, you're gonna hear crickets chirping and the wildlife at night, and everything's just so serene and peaceful. But we actually don't have alarm clocks here in the suburbs. Your alarm clock is your neighbor mowing morning at 7 a.m. Or in the winter, he's got his giant snowblower out cleaning his driveway up. So yes, the suburbs are quiet, but there are certain aspects of life that you just have to be accustomed to, and oftentimes just kind of have to deal with living in the suburbs. Now, number 4 is actually kind of surrounding houses themselves. HOA drama can be so real, and I know there's even viral videos of the HOA managers on Ring doorbells and things of that nature, but yes, those things can be real. Now, there are a million HOAs in the city, but they're all usually for the condos, and there's not as many rules because your condo isn't really in the public eye of the neighborhood like it would be in the suburbs. But a lot of people will move into some HOA neighborhoods and all of a sudden, oh wait, I can't have my company vehicle in the driveway, or oh, my mailbox is 6 feet tall instead of 5'10", and now I gotta chop it 2 inches, or you know what, you just actually can't paint your shutters that color, Mr. Seller or Mr. Homeowner. They need to be a different color. And fun little story, I actually had a guy in Carpentersville, Illinois, that's one of our northwest suburbs, puts on a whole new roof on his house. It was an interesting color. It was like the shade of red, but did it without the HOA's permission, got the permits and everything from the city, but HOA came sniffing and they said, absolutely not, this roof will not stay. And they fought him, and guess what? Yes, they won. He did have to end up getting an entirely new roof because of the HOA. So yes, the drama is real. Yes, they can be a pain, and it's something you need to do thorough homework on before you move into one, because some of the rules are just ridiculous and they can come as a surprise. The 5th thing I noticed about the suburbs is that the social life takes effort. And what I mean by that, I'm gonna start in the city. Now in the city, there are probably 15 million events going on at any given time, any given day. And sometimes they're just right next door. You might be able to walk outside in the city and you see a group on a bar crawl, or you see a group of people riding their bikes, and there's just involvement going on right outside your front door. Now in the suburbs, it would be very easy to almost never see a soul. Nowadays, I mean, you can have your groceries ordered to the house, you can have food ordered to the house, unless you're going to the gas station and you see somebody there. It would be very easy to see nobody in the suburbs. Now, hey, this might be a draw for some people, but as a younger gentleman like myself, I like to socialize, I like to go out, I like to see people. However, that doesn't just come very easily. You have to seek out some events in the suburbs. Now, of course, you can go to a bar or to restaurants or find people at the gym. But again, back to kind of topic number 2 from earlier, you need to get in your car, you need to plan these things, you need to travel there. And there's just so much more effort that goes into having a social life in the suburbs, because your friends might be 25 minutes away in the suburb up north, whereas in the city, they might just be a few blocks down. So these things do take effort, and it is something about the suburbs that if I could change it, I would, but then it would just be Chicago, so no thank you. Jumping into number 6, this was another one kind of brought to my attention through research. Finding quality anything in the suburbs, not that it doesn't exist, but finding quality restaurants. Maybe you're looking for the best sushi place or the best steak place. I have found that in Chicago, when things are good, they become very almost famous locally. Everybody talks about it, and everybody knows, hey, if you want the best pizza, you go to Pequod's or whatever it might be. However, in the suburbs, it's a lot of guess and check, and that can be frustrating, and it can lead to a lot of disappointment. However, I will say that some of the hidden gems in the suburbs are better than the ones in Chicago, but not everybody might agree with me. But either way, finding things that are truly good and enjoyable are a little bit harder to come by in the suburbs and a little bit easier to get your hands on or to run across in Chicago. Now, the final thing to wrap up this list of 7 things I just never realized and wanted to share about the suburbs is the weather rules absolutely everything around you. Now, if you're somebody who likes to be inside all the time and you're not outdoors a lot, then hey, the city might be a good fit for you anyways. But what I think brings a lot of people to the suburban life and what draws them out here are those outdoor activities, like having a bonfire with a couple of buddies in the backyard, or going to play volleyball, or maybe you're out on the lake fishing, maybe you go for a little run. All of those activities can and will be ruined at one point or another by the weather here in Illinois. In the summers, it gets dangerously hot and it's incredibly humid. And guess what? When it's humid with all our lakes and ponds around, the mosquitoes here can be ridiculous. You will probably go through a gallon of bug spray every summer. And guess what? When that snow falls, we get the best of both worlds here in the Chicago suburbs. When there's a foot of snow on the ground, your shovel's gonna be your best friend in the winter, and that can lead to things like frozen pipes and all that fun stuff slipping on the driveway when you're getting into your car if you don't take care of the driveway. But keeping up with those things is really difficult, and it can cancel an entire weekend you thought you had planned. Well, guess what? There's a foot of snow that nobody expected, and now you're not doing any of those things that you wanted to do. So in short, the weather can be a really big detriment to enjoying what I think is ultimately bringing people to the suburbs, and that's the outdoor activities and just enjoying the peace and serenity that is the suburbs. Now, a little bonus I wanted to throw in that, again, I grew up here. I never realized how different it could be in another area of the country. This is a plus for both the suburbs and Chicago, is that you live next to or close to one of the largest airports in the country. O'Hare Airport is a godsend, and I never realized it because that's just my local airport. That airport can get you to so many places. They have so many flights, so many direct flights too. Back on that topic of, maybe you're on vacation, you talk to people, oh, you're in Mexico, and we flew in from Canada. They had to fly to New York, down to, Miami, Florida, back up to Canada, then they're in Atlanta. Now they finally got to Mexico. Something so nice about living here in the Chicago suburbs is O'Hare can get you almost anywhere in this world you want to go to. I have actually, fun fact, never been on a connecting flight in my life because O'Hare can 99% of the time get you directly to your destination. And that is something that I think I overlooked for many years, and I now appreciate. And there you have it. Those were my 8 things that I just never realized living next to Chicago, being in the suburbs my entire life. It's definitely got its quirks, but at the end of the day, I could have moved to Chicago if I wanted to, but the suburbs are king and my mind is not going to change. So if you're somebody that is looking to make that move to the suburbs and you want somebody that can kind of help guide the way through that process, I'm gonna throw my contact information up on the screen here. It'll also be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.